ingestion in Blitzy, and now you've got this massive document in front of you. Do you actually need to read all of that line by line? The short answer? No. The tech spec is really a reference document. It's not something we expect you to read cover to cover. So your job is really just to spot check it. There's 3 steps and 4 categories that Blitzy recommends you cover. Let's dive into those. For step 1, we'll really want to go to what we know. If you're a front-end engineer, maybe check the front-end architecture. If you're a back-end architect, you might want to look at some diagrams in here. Really just go to what you are the subject matter expert in and make sure Blitzy got those correct. Step 2, we'll want to cover any domain-specific language. So any acronyms or terms your team might use that others might not be familiar with, we'll want to make sure Blitzy has a really good understanding of those before we proceed. In step 3, it's time for code generation. So most specs are honestly good enough to proceed on to code generation, but overall, you're just validating. You're not expected to read cover to cover here. So there's a few points in the tech spec that I think are really important to review. The first one is architecture and structure. So let me show you what that looks like. We're looking at a Grafana tech spec here. So really what I'm checking is, did Blitzy get the shape of the system right? So for example, Grafana has a Go backend, it's a React frontend, and it's also a mono repo. So we'll want to make sure that Blitzy has those all covered, which it does here in the summary. And then we'll want to look at the diagram, as I mentioned. Does the layering look right here? Any unconventional patterns that you think your codebase has, you'll want to check for those as well. So for example, Grafana has a Kubernetes style API server. We'll want to make sure that Blitzy caught that, as it's very important to the rest of the codebase. If there's something crucial or structural here, that's when you should re-ingest. For the second part, we'll want to make sure that Blitzy got the tech stack right. Any dependencies or integration points, we'll want to make sure those are covered too. So let's scroll to that part. I would recommend spot checking about 2 or 3 versions that you might know off the top of your head. Also, any external services called at runtime, those need to be here too. For Grafana, for example, we have 19 data source backends, 240 plus front-end dependencies. They're all here. Even if I don't know all of them, I just want to make sure the general idea is covered here. If you have any private registries, those are worth a check as well while you're in here. And for the next section, as I mentioned, domain logic is super important to review here. Blitzy reads code, not your team's mind. So we'll want to make sure any feature descriptions are right or any acronyms and terms that your team uses are correctly understood by Blitzy. It's really, I'd say, the most important category to review. So for Grafana, there's 28 features, for example. You can see that these are tagged with priority. So for the dashboard, that is a critical feature. Alerting, also critical. Playlists are low. Just make sure these tags are really correct to what your team delivers. And then I'd recommend scrolling down to the glossary. This is really where those terms are defined to Blitzy's knowledge. And we'll want to check that they are defined how your team describes them on the day-to-day. If not, I'd recommend re-ingesting. This will carry into code generation if it's wrong. And for the last part I'd like to go through, I know it's an easy one to skip, but it's really worth a few minutes. We'll cover security and testing. So for security first, you can see with Grafana, we have RBAC, OAuth, LDAP. Those are all here, which is great. Any compliance constraints that your team might have, like HIPAA or GDPR, for example, those often need an ingestion prompt, so we'll want to check those very carefully. And then for testing, we have Jest and Playwright for Grafana, so we'll want to make sure those match what your team uses. And then you're pretty much done. Again, 4 categories, 30 minutes, that's the whole review. If there's any gaps, I'd recommend re-ingesting with an updated prompt. If there's things that aren't pertinent to this project that you need to change, I'd recommend changing the ingestion prompt on a future project. It's really rare that any of this happens, but it can happen. Again, the tech spec doesn't need to be perfect. If it's good enough to build on, I'd just move on to code generation. And in the next video, we'll show you exactly how to do that, how to write a prompt to get you the code that you need. If you have any questions or any additional detail you need, I'd definitely recommend checking out our docs. I'll put a link in the description.